7:45 p.m.
At this time, I will call roll. When your name is called, please answer with here or present. Ramon Garza, President.
Here.
Jeff Miller, Vice President.
Here.
Adrian Stevens, Secretary.
Here.
Trustees, Wilford J. Broussard Jr.
Here.
Wanda Heath Johnson.
Here.
Noe Esparza.
Here.
Norma Hernandez.
Here.
Also joining us through video conference and will respond with here or present are Sharonda Johnson, Executive Director of School and Community Relations.
Here.
Christian Thompson, Coordinator for School and Community Relations. Anna Salinas, Administrative Assistant to the Superintendent's Office.
Present.
Lisa McBride, Attorney with Thompson and Horton LLP.
Present.
Sonia George, Deputy Superintendent for Operational Support, Chief Financial Officer.
Here.
Elizabeth Layler, Deputy Superintendent for Educational Support and School Administration.
Here.
And various cabinet members. The following participants will be located in the boardroom at 14705 Wood Forest Boulevard, Houston, Texas, 77015. Please answer with here or present when your name is called. Brian Clements, Chief of Police and Executive Director for Security and Cybersecurity.
Here.
Did you say here, Brian? No. Okay. Elizabeth Valdez, Executive Assistant to the Board of Trustees and Superintendent.
Here.
And I, Dr. John Moore, Superintendent of Schools, here. Staff members in the boardroom will practice social distancing as required, where there will be no more than 6 people in the boardroom as outlined. We will use masks, hand sanitizers, disinfectants, etc., as recommended. I will now turn this meeting over to Ramon Garza, Board President.
Thank you, John. Ms. Valdez, are there any citizen participation items for this evening?
We have no citizen participation items today.
Ms. Valdez, are there any public comment items for this evening?
We have no public comment items for today.
I will now turn the floor over to Lisa McBride, attorney with Thompson and Horton, who will present an overview of the November 3rd, 2020 Board of Trustees elections that will be held jointly with Harris County.
Good afternoon, board members. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I was asked specifically to provide an overview of the reasons why, under applicable law, Galena Park ISD is required to use county polling places on election day and early voting sites during the early voting period. The first and easiest answer is because you're contracting with Harris County for this election, and a term of that contract is that you will use their polling places and their early voting sites. But let's talk about separate and apart from that, because you did have the option of not contracting with Harris County. And so what would that have looked like if you didn't contract with Harris County? Well, Chapter 11 of the Education Code requires a school district, whether they're conducting their election on the May uniform date or the November uniform date, to do so jointly. If you're doing it on the November uniform date, you have to do so jointly with the city or do so jointly with the county. That gets us back again to having a contract with the county if your election partner is the county. But let's say you decided to have your election partner be the city and not do a joint election or an election contract with the county, but just to do a joint election to satisfy the requirements of Chapter 11 with a municipality that has some overlapping jurisdiction with the district. What would that have looked like, or what would the election code have required you to do? Because your election is on the November uniform date, Chapter 42 and 43 of the election code require you to adopt, because it is on the November uniform date, the county's election precincts. So you can't use the election precincts that you normally would designate on a May date. You have to use the county's precincts. Precincts determine the polling places. You normally have, when you have precinct specific polling place, one polling place per precinct. So that's what Chapter 42 requires. Chapter 43 then goes on to state, for those entities that are required to use county election precincts, you have to use the county's polling places if you're on the November election date, even if you're not contracting or operating jointly with the county. And the only exception to that rule that you have is if you are having a runoff election, you are allowed to use fewer polling places in that runoff than you do in the general. What the election code specifically says is you have to use the polling places even if the county has adopted county-wide polling places. The Secretary of State has taken those laws and has specifically opined, and that opinion is included in their election law calendar that goes out to all entities, that means that you must have a presence in each county-wide polling location where the county has a polling place, even if that polling place is outside your jurisdiction, because the whole point of a county-wide polling program is that people can vote anywhere on election day in the county. So the Secretary of State has taken those provisions that I've just walked you through and come out with specific advice to school districts such as Galena Park, that even if you're not partnering with the county, even if you didn't have a contract with the county, you would have to have a presence in each one of the county's polling places, their polling sites. And since they're countywide, it would have to be each one of those countywide polling places. Now we've talked about election day polling places. Let's talk about early voting places. And that's a little bit more direct requirement. What Chapter 84 of the Election Code says is that if you have an election on the November uniform date and you're not contracting with the county, because remember, if you were contracting with the county, a term of the contract is you're just going to use their early voting places. But if you weren't contracting with the county and you're having an election on the November uniform date, then you must designate as an early voting place a county early voting place. And if you want to designate any other place other than a county early voting place as a voting place, then you have to adopt all of the county's eligible voting places as your polling place, just to have one additional one that's not the county's. So basically what that means is if you don't contract with the county and you're having an election on a November date, if you want to have more than one polling place, at a minimum, you have to adopt all of the county's polling places just to have a polling place other than any of those polling places. So all of that taken together means even if you don't have a contract with the county, you're going to have a presence on election day at each one of the countywide election polling places, and you have to adopt as your polling place each of the county's early voting places. If you didn't do it under contract with the county, you would be operating those at your own expense and manning those at your own expense. Doing it under contract with the county or as a joint election with the county allows you to enjoy some economies of scale because you are charged by the number of registered voters. So you pay your pro rata share based on the number of registered voters that are eligible to vote in the election, which is somewhat cheaper than if you were trying to manage having presence in each one of the county's polling places without the help of the county, and then presence at each of the county's early voting places without the help of the county for that as well. So that's an overview of what is required or why you are required to use the county's polling places and early voting places, whether you contract directly with the county or not. And that's probably going to be the most significant difference for your November election than for your May election. I do remind you that the postponed election that you did in May was for one time only. So you're going to go back to your normal May schedule in May of 2021. And these requirements that I just talked about are not going to be applicable to you when you're back on your May schedule. These are just requirements for the November uniform date. Are there any questions? I know I went over a lot of information fairly quickly there.
No question.
I might say thank you, Ms. McBride. You've cleared that up very well. I have been somewhat confused about some of it, and now I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate that.
Any other questions for Ms. McBride? Thank you, Ms. McBride.
My pleasure. If you develop any questions, I'm here. Please let Superintendent Moore know, and I'm happy to respond in whatever medium is most helpful to you guys. Appreciate your attention tonight. Superintendent Moore, thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. At this time, I would turn the floor over to Sonia George, Deputy Superintendent for Operational Support and Chief Financial Officer, who will present the 2020 and 2021 budget workshop.
Okay, good evening. Can everyone hear me now? Okay, great. Took me just a second to share and get myself unmuted. So good evening to everybody, and welcome to our third budget workshop, where we will discuss our continued development of our 2020-21 general fund budget, and we'll also touch on our child nutrition fund and debt service fund budgets. So this is our third budget workshop that we've held with the board. Just as a quick reminder, we had a budget workshop 1 in May, which was a little late than normal due to the COVID disruption. And then we had a second workshop with you at the June regular board meeting. Okay. All right. So just some reminders of what we've done so far and what we have incorporated in the information that we're presenting to you tonight is that so far you've approved across the board a general pay increase of 1.5% of the midpoint for all of our returning employees that has been incorporated into the upcoming budget. You also approved a beginning teacher and nurse salary of $59,000. And then we also had adjustments to all of our returning teachers. Also, so far year to date, in planning for the upcoming 2021 school year, you had taken action previously to approve 91.5 new positions from the general fund. Now, I just want to remind you that sounds like a lot of positions, but if you'll recall, under the provisions of House Bill 3, we were required to plan for a full day pre-K implementation for 2021. So 64 of those new positions were directly related to the full day pre-K initiative. In addition, we have received a estimated property value from the Harris County Appraisal District of $10.1 billion for the upcoming tax year. This is an increase of a little over 2% from where we are ending our 2019 taxable year. Now, one thing that I want to pause here and keep in mind is that Harris County Appraisal District normally is not required to provide property values to us so early in the summer. So this year there was a new requirement because of House Bill 3. They usually give us estimated values in April, and we don't usually get final values from them until August or September. But this year they were required to provide us information prior to the end of July so that we could report this information to the state. And again, House Bill 3 now, what happens is that TEA establishes what our maximum maintenance and operations tax rate can be. And so they use this information in order to set that rate. You know, Harris County is a very large county, and it is very difficult for them to go through the full process of assessing property values by this point in time. And honestly, even the August-September timeframe is a little early for them just because of the volume of accounts that they have to go through and review and assess values for. We do expect there to be variances in what our final value is. But one thing that I just want to remind you is that now the variances under House Bill 3, where we used to, if we had a large increase in our property values, we picked up additional revenue. Or if we dropped property values, the opposite, we would lose revenue. It doesn't quite work that way anymore. Instead, now what happens is that the tax rate that we can establish will adjust accordingly, and we're almost just kind of held at the same revenue. And I don't know if you recall me showing that at the previous workshops, but there's not a lot of fluctuation anymore depending on what happens with these property values. Regardless, we don't expect to receive our final 2020 certified tax roll from Harris County Appraisal District till probably late August and early September. And the truth be known is that we have tended to see that those values will continue to fluctuate throughout the year. But this is where we're at, and we've met our requirements with the state on our timelines for reporting this information as required under House Bill 3. So again, another reminder just quickly on TRS Active Care, that's the employee health insurance that's available to our employees through the teacher retirement system. Luckily this year, the changes that were in place will mostly incur decreases in premiums for our employees or just minor increases. There was one plan level here, this Active Care 2, where we had a 10% kind of across all the tiers for participants. But that is the tier that honestly we have the lowest amount of participants on just because of the cost of the Active Care 2 tier plans. On our other employee benefits, all of our benefits will remain unchanged. So the cost to the employee is the same as it was last year. And just a reminder, we are adding an employee assistance program this year that would be accessible for our employees and their family members for any counseling or mental health services. So that's a new feature that we are providing for our employees this year at a relatively low cost. It's about $35,000 a year for us to provide that. So again, on average daily attendance, which is the biggest driver of state aid, we are assuming this is approximately a 0.5% decrease from where we ended the 2019-20 school year. One of the things I just want to mention to you briefly, we do have some grace here that's been extended to us from the Texas Education Agency for average daily attendance. There are some protections built in that if during the first 6 weeks that we come back to school, if we notice decreases in enrollment or decreases in the attendance of our students, they're going to hold us harmless to the 2018-19 school year, the first 6 weeks of that school year. And they've actually already provided us the average daily attendance number that they would use. So that's good for school districts across Texas who may be encountering challenges with COVID and the startup of the school year. And it gives us some time to try to get our students back enrolled and engaged and attending regularly. So that was some good news from the state. Again, we've already talked about the property value number that we got from Harris County Appraisal District. And then here, this maintenance and operations rate, this was the main reason that we needed that information early this year because the state established this rate, and it's 1.1281. We had templates available to us throughout the summer that we had been projecting this number. So luckily, our projection was spot on, and that is the rate that we expect for TEA to establish for us. And again, the debt service rate here, this 33.25, this is what would be required to repay our debt requirement that we have for 2021. Now, we won't be adopting a tax rate at this point in time. We normally don't adopt a tax rate until the October board meeting. And then here just are some miscellaneous amounts that are included in our budget. And I'm just going to draw attention. We do have some money in here for life cycle, which is kind of ongoing maintenance and operations of facilities. We have some technology upgrades, fleet upgrades, and we've been able to include that in here. But then we also included a pretty significant amount for COVID-19 related costs. So this is PP&E, possible increase in transportation costs, So some additional numbers that we've wrapped into the budget this year into our projection, just in case we have issues and have costs that we're going to incur next year. We wanted to have an amount allocated. So when we include all of those assumptions, this is where we find ourselves as of today. We're projecting a total revenue of $241.2 million for our general fund, and we have expenditures of $243, almost $6. So this includes everything that I've just reviewed with you, all of the salary increases, all of the positions that you've approved to date, and then those additional line items. And so right now where that puts us at is a projection of, if you adopted the budget right now tonight, it would be a slight deficit of $2.4 million. Now, just to remind you, in our general fund, we have a $160 million plus fund balance. Again, I want to talk to you about the Child Nutrition Fund briefly. This fund is also one, this is where we're seeing some differences and some impacts possibly related to COVID. In a normal school year, you would be seeing a budget that we would propose to you that would look very much similar to this. And just as a reminder, we feed 100% of our kids free breakfast and free lunch, and we receive money from the federal government to do that. And this is the revenue that we would receive to do this, and approximately the cost. One of the challenges that we saw at the end of last year with the virtual instruction, and we are anticipating, is that we may see a reduction in the number of students that we are able to serve. And we are working diligently on plans to make sure that we are going to be able to serve as many meals as we can. But in order to get the federal reimbursement for those meals, we must be able to serve them. So right now, this is just, again, a projection, and we don't think it's going to be this low. I just wanted to share with you kind of a what if, worst case scenario. If for some reason, worst case scenario, we were only able to serve 50% of our students, we would see a reduction in the revenue. And of course, the cost to serve those students would reduce. And that could possibly result in a deficit for the Student Nutrition Fund or Child Nutrition Fund. Again, this fund has a fund balance. So if we did have a slight deficit operation, that fund balance would be able to absorb it for about 1 year. But again, we are diligently working on plans to where this number would increase. And again, that assumes that we would operate that way for the entire school year. And we don't anticipate that at this point. We hope that's not what happens. So, and next, this is just the debt service fund. I mentioned this to you briefly a moment ago. This is for all of our bonds that we have sold. And this is the amount that we owe this next year, $33.6 million. And the 33.25% tax rate that I discussed with you just a moment ago, it would generate this much revenue, which is enough to cover that outstanding debt payment. So in relation to the 2021 budget, we are required to post a notice of a public hearing. That public notice goes out this week in the local newspaper. We will hold a public hearing on August 25th to discuss the proposed budget and the tax rate for 2021. And then also on that same evening, we anticipate you adopting the budget for these three funds. And again, we talked about the receipt of these tax rolls from Harris County Appraisal District late August. Early September. And then once this is all adopted, then the campuses and the departments can begin to use their money on September 1st. And then what I anticipate is that it would probably be the October board meeting that we would come back and adopt the tax rates that will be used to fund the budget. So I'm going to spend just a minute or two talking to you about the 2019-20 general fund budget. So, last year at the beginning of the year, we began to realize the additional revenue from House Bill 3. And it was interesting because we were funded during 1920 for the operation of a full day pre-K, even though we were not operating a full day pre-K. So when you adopted the budget at the beginning of the year, you adopted a pretty large surplus of $9.2 million. Now, what we did with the majority of that surplus is that we used that to prepare for full day pre-K, buying furniture, making some facility modifications and things like that. So now, right now, we are tentatively projecting a little over a $2.1 million surplus. Now, what's really become challenging for us, just in addition to House Bill 3, like we didn't already have enough challenges with developing budgets and establishing tax rates with all that, now we've had COVID. And so what's happening is that we are going to receive some new money. So this is good news for us, but we are really just now starting to receive most of the information on how we will be able to apply that new money. And we're just now beginning to be able to accurately estimate how that will impact 2019-20. So we are making a lot of changes and we'll be reclassifying a lot of cost. So we do anticipate some FEMA money. And then we just received word last week about this fund here, this coronavirus relief fund. We knew we were going to receive it, but we didn't have a clue what the dollar amount would be or what we could even use it on. So it's about $1.7 million. And then this last bucket of money, and really what the triangle here represents is the restrictions that are on the money. So the FEMA is the most restrictive, and then this money, when you get down here, we can start using that money on just about any cost that we want to. But what I want to emphasize here on this ESSER money, this is not going to be new money. This is the money that's created a lot of controversy in the state. It's federal money. And what the state of Texas decided to do was to substitute that money for state aid. So what's going to happen is about $5 million of the state aid that we thought we were going to receive for 1920, they're going to swap it out, and now we're going to receive federal dollars. So what happens now is we have to do an accounting gymnastics routine, and we're going to have to reclassify a lot of our expenses that we would have normally seen and to federal sources. So again, it's unfortunate. We are getting $5 million, and there's been a little bit of confusion about this $5 million. A lot of people think it's new money, and it's not. It's just substituting state aid is all it is. And then here's just a slide, just very briefly for you, that shows all these additional dollars that we are going to receive for 1920 that literally we're just really just starting to get some good guidance within the last few weeks on how we will be able to apply that money. So what you see once we're done completely with 1920 and it is reported to you by the auditors next January is going to look different than what I presented to you tonight. And I just wanted you to be aware of just all of the factors that now are at play and all of the changes that we are needing to make to account for all of this this influx of money and changing of money. So that's all that I have. If you have any questions about the 2021 budget and the development of that so far, or anything about 1920, I can answer any of those questions now.
Any questions for Ms. George? Thank you, Ms. George.
Thank you.
This time I will turn the floor over to Elizabeth Layler, Deputy Superintendent for Educational Support and School Administration, who will present the proposed superintendent's performance goals for 2020 through 2021.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, so I am going to share with you some proposed goals. As you know, we have a new superintendent, and so we have some new proposed performance goals. Can everybody see that? Do I have a thumbs up? Okay. So first, I want to remind you of the evaluation calendar. He's come in at a different time than when we had Dr. Williams, but in March, The board will still review the superintendent's performance goals as you set the new district goals. So the district goals are still going to be set in March, and then that is that time we can update the superintendent's performance goals if you desire to, if you want to make recommended changes. And a friendly reminder, we have 8 district goals. I know there was some discussion this last year of why we have so many, and that's something that we can certainly work on in reducing. So here are the first 4 goals. I'm not going to read them to you. And then our second 4 goals with our district goals. So as we get to a superintendent performance goal, it's going to say it supports some of these district goals. So I'm going to go through each one, and this is where we have an interactive lesson. I need y'all to let me know whether that goal is good as is or if you want to make any changes. So this is a workshop where we work together. So goal 1, the superintendent will ensure that that there are structures in place to keep students and staff safe. Is it good as is, or are there any changes that you would like to see? All right, I use my teacher pause, so I'm going to assume that one's good, but we can come back to it if we need to. Goal 2, the superintendent ensures student performance improvement by providing high-quality remote and face-to-face learning. That supports district goals 3, 4, 5, and 7. Any changes to that goal or any changes to the wording on that one? Are all good?
It's good for me.
Okay, thank you. Goal 3, the superintendent will ensure opportunities are provided for students to participate in a variety of co-curricular and extracurricular activities, such as CATE, fine arts, athletics, etc. That supports goal 2 and 4. Are we good with that one?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Goal 4, the superintendent effectively manages the district's administrative, physical, and facility functions, supported by goals 1, 5, 7, and 8.
Good.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
And last but not least, the superintendent will maintain and support a positive relationship with the Board of Trustees, parents, and community.
Yes.
Okay.
Be better.
All right. So we're at the end, nice and quick. Are there any additions? Those are 5 goals. Is there something else you would like to add or any changes again on any of those goals? This again will be how you will be part of his evaluation this next year. We'll be providing reports based on these goals for you throughout the year.
Goal number 1, can we go back to it?
Certainly. There you go. The superintendent will ensure there are structures in place to keep students and staff safe.
So should it be specific or spelled out a little more specific where it's like cyber security as well as like physical security? I don't know how we would word it, but should it include?
I think we can. We certainly will need to report on all the different ways. So there's some things that we're required by law to do, like dating violence. There's things about the physical safety, and you're right, there's the things about the cybersecurity and the emotional safety of our students and staff. Mm-hmm. So we can either add the words in here or we can make sure it's reported out that way. Do you have a way you'd like to see it worded?
Does anyone object to or not agree with maybe adding, like you said, the emotional security of students and staff, the cyber component as well as physical, just to be a little more specific?
Adrian, Elizabeth, can I ask a question? Are there going to be, when these come out in final form, are there going to be the sub goals under each of the goals the way they are with the district goals, or is this it?
No, sir, there's not targets with these. there is reports with that. So we can certainly put in parentheses after keep students and staff safe, and put in parentheses physically, emotionally, and cyber security. We can come up with some terms, i.e., for example, and list those, or you can just ask for those in your reports, that it's not all the examples are not under around physical safety, for example.
I would be okay with either listing them under the goal or having them as maybe an addendum to the goal. I mean, either way is fine with me. They could be listed here, or we can add them or report them like you're saying, Liz. I'm okay either way.
Yeah, and I'm okay either way. It's just a little vague.
Okay.
But I don't have any
So
wording.
what you're looking at is physical, emotional security. And I can put those in parentheses, i.e., and then that way there's reports on each of those.
Maybe we could just say including physical, emotionally, and cyber.
Okay.
I don't care. I'm just trying to be helpful.
And I just want to make sure that each goal is measurable, where we can go back and kind of evaluate. I guess all of these are measurable because the report is going to show how each goal was achieved.
Right. And, a little bit of a difference with the superintendent's goals versus maybe some specific goals we have is that his are that there are structures in place. So he's not the one going up and setting up the security, but he's going to ensure his people have set up the security. Mm-hmm. So I rewrote goal 1 to say the superintendent will ensure there are structures in place to keep students and staff safe, including physical, emotional, and cyber safety. Is that better? Clearer?
Yes. For me.
Okay. Are there any others that you would like to see looked at again, reworded, or any that you want to add?
Are we
I'm
talking,
okay.
When we're talking emotional, we're speaking mentally, right? I mean, physical, mental.
Yeah, emotional safety is sort of the anti-bullying, that we have a safe place to disagree, that we teach students how to be appropriate in their disagreement, and that it's okay to disagree and you don't have to use fists, that type of thing.
Thank you, Ms. Layler.
You're welcome. We'll send a final copy of all these to you. Y'all have a great day.
There being no other business before the board at this time, the meeting is adjourned. It is 6:13 p.m. Independent School District is now convening a regular meeting on Monday, August 10, 2020 via video conference. The time is 6:13 p.m. I want to welcome the viewers to this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As the Galena Park ISD Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports from the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policies for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibilities of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on today's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on this notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to hear the matters discussed. Thank you for taking the time to join us today and for your interest in Galena Park Independent School District.
At this time, I will call roll. When your name is called, please answer with here or present. Ramon Garza, President.
Present.
Jeff Miller, Vice President.
Here.
Adrian Stevens, Secretary.
Here.
Trustees, Wilford J. Broussard Jr.
Here.
Wanda Heath Johnson.
Here.
Noe Esparza.
Here.
And Norma Hernandez.
Here.
Also joining us through video conference and will respond with here or present are Sharonda Johnson, Executive Director for School and Community Relations.
Here.
Brishan Thompson, Coordinator for School and Community Relations. Anna Salinas, Administrative Assistant to the Superintendent's Office.
Here.
And Cabinet Member Sonia George.
Here.
Dr. Juana Giacona.
Here.
Elizabeth Layler.
Here.
Terry Moore.
Here.
Dr. Michelle Epps. Dina Edgar.
Here.
Dr. David Harris.
Here.
Mike McKay.
Here.
Holly Malloy.
Here.
The following participants will be located in the boardroom at 14705 Wood Forest Boulevard, Houston, Texas 77015. Please answer with here or present when your name is called. Brian Clements, Chief of Police and Executive Director for Security and Cybersecurity.
Here.
Elizabeth Valdez, Executive Assistant to the Board of Trustees and Superintendent.
Here.
And I, Dr. John Moore, Superintendent of Schools, here. Staff members in the boardroom will practice social distancing as required, where there will be no more than 6 people in the boardroom as outlined. We will use masks, hand sanitizers, disinfectants, etc. as recommended. I will now turn this meeting over to President.
Ms. Valdez, are there any citizen participation items for this evening?
We have no citizen participation items today.
Ms. Valdez, are there any public comment items for this evening?
Yes, we have public comment items.
Patrons who have duly registered per policy BED local may address the board regarding matters of concerns interest to the district. Other than the character of any student, staff, or board member, I would like to remind the video conference audience that the comments of the speakers sent via online link reflect their own positions or opinions. The board may not discuss or act upon any matter that is not listed under the action item portion of the agenda. Therefore, board members may not discuss the comments. Please understand that a lack of response from the board member does not indicate agreement or approval of the comment. Ms. Valdez, you may begin.
This public comment was submitted by Ms. Patricia Thomas. Thank you for allowing me to address the board. I am part of a group of ladies, 7, that get together 4 times a week in a friend's personal pool for water aerobics. Our group keeps expanding and we are running out of space. We were wanting to see what other options we could do to include the community. Would there be a way we could use an auditorium a couple days a week? I have met with Ms. Dancy a couple of times and her options to us were as follows. Number 1, the instructor would have to provide insurance. I cannot afford to do this. Number 2, we would have to provide the lifeguard. One of the participants' daughters is a lifeguard. Number 3, we could only use the pool from 4 to 5. Most working class doesn't leave work until 5. This would benefit our community if the auditorium was also used for the wellness of the adults along with our students. I graduated 78 and I have lived in the North Shore area for 50 plus years. I have taken the water aerobics classes at the YMCA in the outdoor pool and when it was at the auditorium and the place was packed. Whatever you could help our community with, we would all greatly benefit from the use. Stay safe, North Shore.
We want to thank Patricia Thomas for submitting the item.
President Garza, there are no more items in this category.
Thank you, Ms. Valdez. Today's invocation will be presented by Norma Hernandez, and the pledge will be led by Noe Esparza. Ms. Hernandez.
Please bow your heads. Father, our Lord, this is the day you have made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. It doesn't look like we thought it would look, nor will tomorrow or the days to come be likely executed in the way we expected and prepared for. Help us to see the good in each day. Help us to find reasons to rejoice and ways to be glad. Each one of us, both teacher and student, were created for a specific purpose. Help teachers have confidence in their craft. They were meant to teach, educate, coach, counsel, and lead. Their work and their efforts are never in vain. Thank you, Father, for technology in allowing many students to continue their education online, for virtual classrooms and resources. Thank you for every teacher and educator adjusting to the new normal. Equip them with energy and inspiration to come alongside their students in this challenging time of crisis. Bless us, O Lord, as we work together as a board of trustees, making decisions to help guide our administrators, principals, teachers, and staff. Bless our schools so that our students can find a place to learn, socialize, and nurture their bodies. Empower coaches and student athletes to communicate about their training virtually and in person, to stay inspired and reminded that impossible situations can be the fuel for big dreams to be realized. In God's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
liberty
and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Norma and Noe. We will now move on to this evening's special recognition portion of the agenda. Dr. Moore.
This evening, we have some special recognitions. I would like to congratulate everyone being recognized tonight. At this time, I'll turn the floor over to Sharonda Johnson, Executive Director for School and Community Relations. Sharonda.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Tonight, we will recognize 5 outstanding employees. Victoria Garcia, Assistant Principal, North Shore Elementary School. Ms. Garcia most recently served as Campus Instructional Coach at MacArthur Elementary School. She has 14 years of experience in education. Congratulations, Ms. Garcia. Dr. Juana Jacona, Chief Administrative Officer, Department for Educational Support. Dr. Jacona most recently served as Associate Superintendent for Human Resource Services. She has 26 years of experience. Thank you, Dr. Moore. Tonight, we will recognize 5 outstanding employees. Victoria Garcia, Assistant Principal, North Shore Elementary School. Ms. Garcia most recently served as Campus Instructional Coach at MacArthur Elementary School. She has 14 years of experience in education. Congratulations, Ms. Garcia. Dr. Juana Jacona, Chief Administrative Officer, Department for Educational Support. Dr. Jacona most recently served as Associate Superintendent for Human Resource Services. She has 26 years of experience in education. Congratulations, Dr. Jacona. Janie Jimenez, Principal, Cimarron Elementary School. Ms. Jimenez most recently served as Assistant Principal at Cloverleaf Elementary School. She has 18 years of experience in education. Congratulations, Ms. Jimenez. Oliver Perret, Assistant Principal, Galena Park Middle School. Mr. Perret most recently served as Campus Instructional Coach at Williamson Elementary School. He has 4 years of experience in education. Congratulations, Mr. Perret. Angeles Rosales, Assistant Principal, Cloverleaf Elementary School. Ms. Rosales most recently served as Elementary ELA Instructional Specialist. She has 14 years of experience in education. Congratulations, Ms. Rosales. This concludes our recognitions for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any board member may make a comment during this portion of the agenda without prior posting being required. Comment items may not pertain to the character of any student, staff, or board member and may not be discussed or deliberated upon this time. Does anyone have a comment at this time? Oh, Harold Sonny Fletcher, Senior Director of Facilities Planning and Construction, will provide a 2016 bond program construction update.
Thank you, President Garza. Board, Dr. Moore, and Cabinet. Let's get up my presentation. Good. Wonderful. All right. Did that share okay, everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Quite the busy year here at Jacinto City Elementary School, getting it ready. The picture on the left is the main stair that goes up. To the left of that picture is the library, and to the right up above is a large group instruction area with an acrylic handrail there. And of course, we're very excited to get the graphics in. Picture on the right, we see the terrazzo floor and a display cabinet that'll be there for their trophies and other memorabilia there at the campus. Galena Park High School just started our first edition of phase 1 there for Galena Park. Got our pad is in, had to go down 6 feet and then bring select fill in for that site. And then in addition to also with the addition, we'll be renovating the restrooms. That's of course the picture on the right as we're getting the new carriers in for the new water closets. Summer 2020 renovations, doing restroom renovations at Zotes, in addition to some roof work. But wanted to show you that the restroom renovations were well underway. North Shore 9th grade, doing work there, renovating the athletic locker rooms. A lot of needs in those locker rooms. Glad we're getting that project worked through. Of course, at North Shore Senior High, here's a in process, obviously, picture of the new front administrative area. There'll be a new desk that'll come in. This gives us a more secure vestibule, like we're doing at our new campuses. To the left of this picture is the main entrance, and it will be divided roughly in half for about 20 feet for a new security vestibule there. Of course, building security vestibules is our theme here. Purple Sage Elementary, you see the new door and wall here on the left, reworked of their front reception counter, doing similar things also at Green Valley Elementary. Obviously, this isn't a picture of that. This picture, we did some structural repairs right around this column. So wanted to just show a picture of how nice the cafeteria was there. And then Sam Houston Elementary moved a portable over there for all-day pre-K, so some classrooms could shuffle around. Then in projects in construction, working on Pyburn Elementary School replacement. I believe we have an agenda item coming up later for that. And then, of course, Galena Park High School phase 2, 3, and maybe 4 is also in design. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. I will entertain a motion to approve the amendment amended order of election calling for an election conducted jointly with Harris County on the third day of November 2020 for the purpose of electing 3 positions to the Galena Park ISD Galena Park ISD Board of Trustees positions 5, 6, and 7 as presented.
I know as far as a move, we approve the amended order of election as presented.
I, Wanda Johnson. I, Wanda Heath Johnson, second the motion.
If the motion passes, I, Ramon Garza, authorize GPISD to use my electronic signature for the item. Ms. Stevens, do you authorize the use of electronic signature as well?
Yes, I authorize the use.
A motion was made by Noe Esparza and second by Wanda Heath Johnson. As I call your name, please state your name and indicate your vote by stating in favor, oppose, or abstain. Jeff Miller.
Jeff Miller, in favor.
Adrian Stevens.
Adrian Stevens, in favor.
Wilford Broussard.
Wilford Broussard, in favor.
Wanda Johnson.
Wanda Johnson, in favor.
Noe Esparza.
Noe Esparza, in favor.
Norma Hernandez.
Norma Hernandez, in favor.
I, Ramon Garza, am in favor. The motion carries 7-0 with no abstentions. I will entertain a motion to approve the general liability, auto liability, and physical damage, educators' legal liability, and crime insurance provided by Texas Political Subdivision Joint Self-Insurance Fund through an interlocal agreement as presented.
I, Norma Hernandez, move we approve the general liability, auto liability, and physical damage, educators' legal liability, and crime insurance provided by Texas Political Subdivisions Joint Self-Insurance Fund through an interlocal agreement as presented.
I, Wilford Broussard, second the motion.
The motion was made by Norma Hernandez and second by Wilford Broussard. As I call your name, please state your name and indicate your vote by stating in favor, oppose, or abstain. Jeff Miller.
Jeff Miller, in favor.
Mr. Miller, did you want to abstain on that one?
No, sir.
Adrian Stevens.
Adrian Stevens, in favor.
Wilford Broussard.
Wilford Broussard, in favor.
Wanda Johnson.
Wanda Johnson, in favor.
Noe Esparza.
Noe Esparza, in favor.
Norma Hernandez.
Norma Hernandez, in favor.
I, Ramon Garza, am in favor. The motion carries 7-0 with no abstentions. With respect to the general consent agenda, do we want to remove any item for a separate vote or take this agenda as is?
Wanda Johnson would like to take the agenda as is, consent agenda as is.
I, Noe Esparza, second the motion.
If the motion passes, I, Ramon Garza, authorize Galena Park ISD to utilize my electronic signature for the item. Ms. Stevens, do you authorize the use of electronic signature as well?
I do authorize the use of my electronic signature.
A motion was made by Wanda Heath Johnson and second by Noe Esparza. As I call your name, please state your name and indicate your vote by stating in favor, oppose, or abstain. Jeff Miller.
Jeff Miller, in favor.
Adrian Stevens.
Adrian Stevens, in favor.
Wilford Broussard.
Wilford Broussard, in favor.
Wanda Johnson.
Wanda Johnson, in favor.
Noe Esparza.
Noe Esparza, in favor.
Norma Hernandez.
Norma Hernandez, in favor.
I, Ramon Garza, am in favor. The motion carries 7-0 with no abstentions. With respect to the construction consent agenda, do we want to remove any items for separate vote or take the agenda as is?
I, Norma Hernandez, move we approve the construction consent agenda as presented.
I second. I, Wanda Heath Johnson, second the motion.
If the motion passes, I, Ramon Garza, authorize GPISD to utilize my electronic signature for this item. Ms. Stevens, do you authorize the use of electronic signature as well?
I do authorize the use of my electronic signature.
A motion was made by Norma Hernandez and second by Wanda Heath Johnson. As I call your name, please state your name and indicate your vote by stating in favor, oppose, or abstain. Jeff Miller.
Jeff Miller in favor.
Adrian Stevens.
Adrian Stevens in favor.
Wilford Broussard.
Wilford Broussard in favor.
Wanda Johnson.
Wanda Johnson in favor.
Noe Esparza.
Noe Esparza in favor.
Norma Hernandez.
Norma Hernandez in favor.
I, Ramon Garza, am in favor. The motion carries 7-0 with no abstentions. With the respect to the financial consent agenda, do we want to remove any item for separate vote or take the agenda as is?
I, Jeff Miller, move we approve the financial consent agenda as presented.
I, Noe Esparza, second the motion.
If the motion passes, I, Ramon Garza, authorize GPISD to utilize my electronic signature for this item. Ms. Stevens, do you authorize the use of electronic signature as well?
I do authorize the use of my electronic signature.
A motion was made by Jeff Miller and second by Noe Esparza. As I call your name, please state your name and indicate your vote by stating in favor, oppose, or abstain. Jeff Miller.
Jeff Miller in favor.
Adrian Stevens.
Adrian Stevens in favor.
Wilford Broussard.
Wilford Broussard in favor.
Wanda Johnson.
Wanda Johnson in favor.
Noe Esparza.
Noe Esparza in favor.
Norma Hernandez.
Norma Hernandez in favor.
I, Ramon Garza, am in favor. The motion carries 7-0 with no abstention. Sonia George, Deputy Superintendent for Operational Support, Chief Financial Officer, presented. One, the emergency purchase authorization by resolution COVID-19 pandemic. Two, the donation report for July 2020. Three, the comparative tax collection report for the period of September 1 through May 31st for the fiscal years of 2018 to 2019 and 2019 through 2020. Comparative tax collection report for the period of September 1 through June 30th for fiscal years 2018 to 2019 and 2019 through 2020. Certification of tax collection rate. And six, the annual report of the District Cooperative Purchasing Program management fees for fiscal year 2020 through 2021. Number seven, the 2016 bond program financial report as of June 30th, 2020. Elizabeth Laylor, Deputy Superintendent for Educational Support and School Administration, presented. One, the Early Head Start Policy Council meeting minutes for May 2020. Two, the Early Head Start Policy Council meeting minutes from June of 2020. And three, the Early Head Start Update and Fund 205 Expenditure Report Summary for May 2020. Four, the Early Head Start Update and Fund 205 Expenditure Report Summary for June 2020. An executive session of the board will now be held in matters contained in notice of the meeting as authorized by sections 551.001 through sections 551.84 of the Texas Government Code, the Texas Opens Meeting Act. The time is 6:39 p.m. Staff, with the exception of Dr. John Moore, Ms. Valdez, and Ms. Salinas, are dismissed from the board. At this time, all other staff joining us via video conference will be placed at the Zoom waiting room. Staff who are live streaming the meeting, please stop the live streaming video.
Okay.
Executive session is adjourned. The live streaming has begun again, and the board is now in open session. The time is 6:47 p.m. I will entertain a motion on the items covered in executive session. Is there a motion to approve the employment of contractual personnel as presented?
I, Norma Hernandez, move we approve the employment of contractual personnel as presented.
I, Wanda Johnson, second the motion.
A motion was made by Norma Hernandez and second by Wanda Johnson. As I call your name, please state your name and indicate your vote by stating in favor, opposed, or abstain. Jeff Miller.
Jeff Miller in favor.
Adrian Stevens.
Adrian Stevens in favor.
Wilford Broussard.
Wilford Broussard in favor.
Wanda Johnson.
Wanda Johnson in favor.
Noe Esparza.
Noe Esparza in favor.
Norma Hernandez.
Norma Hernandez in favor.
I, Ramon Garza, am in favor. The motion carries 7-0 with no abstention. There being no other business before the board at this time, the meeting is adjourned. The time is 6:48 p.m.